other partner here that was the other wife, she starts to poke fun at Hannah. And it says she would provoke her bitterly to irritate her because the Lord had closed up her womb. So she would make fun of her. Aha, you can't have any children, I can. Too bad, eh? No inheritance for you. Too bad. I guess it's not very nice not having kids, eh? Must be kind of difficult to see me playing with the kids and then belong to me, eh? What do you think? And in that culture, having children was really, really important. And so what Elkanah tried to do is he said, I'll give you a double portion. And then he comes to her and he says to her, Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? He says, that I love you. Isn't that really good enough? Come on now. I'm a great guy. I'm macho. I'm kind of a real important guy. Isn't that good enough? She wasn't worried about that. She was worried about not having any children. That was the issue in her life. That was the crisis. You see, when you begin to work with a crisis, you have to dig around in it and sort of find out what is really the issue. Was it the issue that he wasn't providing for her? Was it the issue that he didn't treat her right? Was it the issue that he didn't love her? No, that wasn't the issue at all. When you dig down and find out what the issue was that she didn't have any children and she wanted children. And as she wanted children, she wanted to be able to come away from that feeling fulfilled and having children as an inheritance. You see, in your reorientation or your simplification in a crisis, sometimes it's very hard to get it to be simple. When you are fighting with someone and there's words flowing back and forth and you're saying things out of anger and bitterness, it's terrible hard to sort out what is simply going on. How do you root? Another passage I want to draw to your attention is the one in the book of Ruth. And you remember the account where Naomi leaves and goes with her husband, and then her husband dies. And then she has 2 sons, and both of them die, and she's left with 2 daughter-in-laws. Kind of a sad story, right? A lot of death in the family. A lot of grief. And as she begins to work with that, what happens is you run across Ruth and you read where it says, look, Naomi said to her, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. You should do the same. But Ruth replied, don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you live, I will live. My people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she said nothing more. It was simple. In Ruth's mind, she boiled it down and she got to the root. And to her it was very simple. Naomi, I just want to be with you. Don't send me away. Don't ask me to leave. Don't ask me to go back to my other gods. I see something good here and I'd like to keep it. Simplify. That's really important when you have a crisis. Our same neighbor that we had, that we were working with, and some of the other individuals that I've worked with over the years, when there's been a crisis, they get panicky. And it's very hard to simplify. I remember saying to someone in a crisis, you need to just sit down, stay out of the road. In other words, very simple, sit. Don't do anything else. If you move, if you go anywhere, if you do anything, it'll get worse. Just plain sit. What was happening in this story here of Ruth and Naomi is Naomi was trying to make it complex. You go back home, you figure out your own grief, you go and sort it out, and Ruth says, it's simple. I just plain want to be with you. I simply want to enjoy your God. Keep it simple. You see, working with a crisis is working with simplicity. The third tool that you need to dig out of your toolbox is really the tool of clarity. You can have some things that are real simple, but some things aren't really clear. If you go to the story of Job, when Job lost everything, he was tempted to turn on God and curse. But instead, he did not sin and blame God. He really struggled to sort things out, even when his wife was not supportive, but still did what was right. His wife turns to him and says, Job, why don't you turn and curse God? He's not treating you very well. You see, clarity is really important. And that's really when Job turns and says, no, I'm not going to curse God. I'm going to clarify my relationship here. As for me. You see, in a crisis, you can't sort it out for everybody else. But you can sort it out for you. You can sort out your role and what you do and how things affect you and how they are relational to you as an individual. That's why clarity, it can be really simple, but clarity can be really confused. Is it something that the other person should take responsibility for, or is it something that I need to take responsibility for? Job could have said, you know what, it's God's fault. I think God's really messing up here. I didn't do anything. I wasn't really in trouble. I was simply following God. It's all God's fault. He could have turned on his wife and said, you know what, you asked me to curse God? I don't want to have anything more to do with you. You don't want to follow God. Why should I have you around? And he could have really turned his back on his wife. He simply said, you know what, as for me, I'm not going that way. I'm going to respond in a particular way that I am going to continue to work with God. That's what you call clarification. Clarification is a little bit like trying to get your glasses sorted out. It's trying to see things from the other side so that you don't get messed up with what's going on around you, but you work with what's going on in you. Very important. What's going on inside of you, rather than what's going on around and what are others dictating to you. You see, a crisis can come from somebody else. It doesn't have to come from you. Job didn't initiate it. He wasn't sinning and going and defying God. He was going along trying to serve God. But when he concluded and looked at it from the other side, he said, you know what? I'm not going to allow these circumstances to destroy me. One of the things that happens when it comes to clarity is we normally have a problem with our tongue. We normally have a problem with our communication. James says, but no one can tame the tongue. It's as restless and evil and full of deadly poison. Sometimes it praises our Lord and Father, and sometimes it curses those who have been made in the image of God. And so blessings and cursings come pouring out of the same mouth. Surely, my brothers and sisters, this is not right. Does a spring of water bubble out with both fresh water and bitter water? Does a fig tree produce olives or a grapevine produce figs? No, you can't draw fresh water from a salty spring. If you are wise and understand God's way, prove it by living an honorable life and doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. James says, put a plug in it. In other words, when you're working with this whole aspect of clarity, put a plug in the mouth so that the mouth doesn't spout a whole lot of things that creates regret afterwards. You see, clarity isn't necessarily being able to say whatever you think. Clarity is being able to sort through what is happening and begin to understand it from the other side. And begin to see the different players that are involved. And so if you're fighting with your spouse, and your spouse is really giving you a hard time, then when you simplify it and